Good morning to all. So I call the advisory Refrigeration Contractor Advisory Board to meeting on October the 20th. It is 10:20. And so we'll move on to the gavel. I'm sorry. But what's the roll call? First of all, I want to introduce Ms. Suzanne for joining our group and bringing some diversity to our team. We look forward to working together with different perspectives as we move forward. So, Ms. Suzanne Smith, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Look forward to working with you guys.
Ms. Delia, will you take?
Yes, sir. And presiding officer, the time you called 10:20 and it was 10:02.
I need to enlarge my screen. I was looking at the date. You're right, 10:02.
That's okay. Roll call. Dave Yellowbeck.
I am present.
David Morris.
I am here.
Flor Lujan.
Present.
Suzanne Smith.
I'm here.
Jerry Bittner.
I'm here.
And Mr. Dolores Compion, presiding officer.
I am here. And so let me cover just a couple of housekeeping rules. Just make sure that your phone's on mute when you're not speaking, because it gives a little bit of a background noise. And also state your name before you announce anything. That way, Ms. Delia can take the notes as required. So with that said, I'm going to move quickly on to item number C. Ms. Winston.
Good morning again, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to give just a brief advisory board member training, just to update us on everything that's going on. This meeting is being conducted by video conference, and the public is watching by live stream. Persons who signed up to make public comment will have a chance to do so later in the meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. Here are some tips to make sure we have a successful meeting. As our presiding officer has stated, please keep your microphone muted until you'd like to speak. Put all phones on silent and turn off any other sources of noise in your workspace. If at all possible, avoid fidgeting, because that directs the eye in our little Brady Bunch squares to you and possibly not to the speaker. We're going to make sure that when we do want to speak, we raise our hand. This platform does have a raise hand feature, as we've learned most of them do during this socially distanced time. But our presiding officer is running the meeting. We have folks in the background who are pinch hitting where needed, and we may overlook you. So, elementary school style, raise your hand so that it's visible to the feed. The presiding officer will call on you. Also, roll call votes will be taken during any action item in the meeting. That cuts down on confusion. Miss Luna will simply call a name and you'll unmute yourself and vote. If you have any questions or problems during the meeting for connectivity, try to let the presiding officer know. As I said, we have staff working in the background. We won't see him, but we'll hear him sometimes, and Mr. Fickle will assist with those connectivity issues. Please stay on camera during the meeting, even if you're not speaking. If you need a recess, let the presiding officer know. Raise your hand visibly to the camera and request that. I'm sure Mr. Compion will preside. Now, here's a little added tip that I didn't really think we'd have to add, but we've been seeing something new. We appreciate everyone taking time out from their day to just serve Texans in this way, even in our socially distanced mediums. However, if at all possible, please do not drive while participating in the meeting. It's a safety issue, and we want to see you here again. So someone said, we'd be remiss without saying it. We regulate driver education and safety. Beyond that, we just like all y'all, really. We don't want anything to happen. And it's happened a couple of times. So far, there have been no accidents, but it makes us a little nervous, and we just prefer you not to do that. If you get inadvertently disconnected from the meeting, rejoin the meeting using the same link that you used to join initially. We have done numerous meetings this way so far since earlier this year, and we still have occasional blips. We can't control connectivity of internet. We do our best, but sometimes that's beyond our control. We're using quite a bit, and bandwidth has been stretched to the limits. But no worries. If we have any blips, we'll deal with them in real time. We'll take that small recess when we need to. This is anticipated and it's okay. We, as always, we will adjust. We'll go through each agenda item and we'll take care of everything that we need to act on. Thank you so much again for participating, and I'm turning it back over to you, Mr. Presiding Officer. Thanks again.
Again, thank you for everybody taking time out of their day to be here today. So really do appreciate that. And we'll move on quickly to item D, agenda item D. We turn it over to Mr. Jennings.
Thank you, Chairman Compion, and thanks to all the board members for being here today. I want to extend a warm welcome again to Ms. Smith. Again, it's Doug Jennings. I'm the Assistant General Counsel. And Assistant General Counsel, lead attorney for the for General Counsel as regards to the ACR program. I'm going to present you with what I hope will be a brief training. Typically, this is an annual training, but since we have a new member, it doesn't hurt anybody to go over the basics again today. So I am going to attempt to share my presentation, and let's see. Is that working for everyone? All right, I see the thumbs up from Ms. Winston. Thank you. Today we will be talking. We'll just be giving you kind of the nuts and bolts of three different laws: the Open Meetings Act, the Administrative Procedure Act, and the Public Information Act. We will spend the majority of the time on the Open Meetings Act because I feel like that's most relevant to your position as advisory board members. In case you're not familiar with the Open Meetings Act, the purpose of the Open Meetings Act is to ensure open and transparent government. And the act requires meetings of governmental bodies, such as the ACR Contracting Board, to be open to the public and to be preceded by public notice of the time, place, and subject matter of the meeting. We are in relatively uncharted territory here in this new paradigm, if you will, of virtual meetings. But we are still complying with the Open Meetings Act by presenting this meeting to the public and by posting the agenda in compliance with other relevant laws. To understand the act, we really need to understand a few key terms first. Quorum is the first. A quorum is very simple. It's a majority of the members of the advisory board as created by rule or statute. A quorum of a governmental body must be present to take official action. And if a quorum isn't present, obviously, the board may meet and discuss, but may not take any official action. Deliberation is another key component of the Open Meetings Act. Deliberation simply means discussion, and that can take place verbally, it can take place orally or in a written manner, as long as the discussion involves an issue within the jurisdiction of the governmental body. So today at the board, if we were to get off topic and start talking about Mr. Compion's upcoming party, that wouldn't be deliberation for purposes of this act. However, when we are talking about relevant topics to the ACR industry, we are definitely engaging in deliberation. Another key term, and one that might be tricky, is meeting. One of the keys to the Open Meetings Act is that a meeting occurs anytime and anywhere a quorum of a governmental body engages in deliberation regarding public business or public policy over which that governmental body has supervision or control. So whether we are in this meeting today, which has been noticed to the public, or whether we are at, whether a quorum of this body is at a industry function, that could potentially be a meeting, and we'll discuss some of those wrinkles in a few minutes. Lastly, notice is a key portion of the Open Meetings Act. The act requires advance notice of the date, time, place, and subject of each meeting held. And TDLR provides this notice in a form of an agenda, which of course you have before you. Notice has to be filed with the Secretary of State at least 7 days before we have a meeting in order for the public to be apprised of the topics to be discussed. I just discussed that a meeting can happen anywhere where a quorum engages in deliberation about public business. And so the question is, I think the question naturally arises is, can board members ever meet in a public setting or an informal setting without violating the Open Meetings Act? And the answer to that is a clear yes. If you find a quorum of your advisory board at an industry gathering or other function, feel free to meet and discuss items that are relevant to the gathering. However, stay away from board business. Once again, I'll remind you, if a quorum of this body meets and discusses public business, you have violated the Open Meetings Act unless there was proper notice. So just some key points to remember. Just always be aware and potentially wary of any situation occurring outside of a properly noticed meeting, like today's meeting, in which a quorum of members is present. Don't engage in substantive conversations relating to board business or policy when a quorum is present and you're outside of a regularly noticed and scheduled meeting. And beware the walking quorum. The walking quorum is an interesting creature. It occurs when communications among fewer of a quorum of members then spread to what becomes a quorum or greater of members. So for example, let's just say we have a 5-member advisory board. 2 members, which is not a quorum, 2 members exchange phone calls and emails expressing their thoughts on an upcoming rule change, and they exchange research that they have performed regarding that issue. One of the board members then forwards that email exchange to a 3rd member. So once again, we have a 5-member board in this example. By forwarding that exchange to the 3rd member, we have involved a quorum of that board. So that is what's called a walking quorum, essentially something that is intended to be a discussion that is intended to be had by less than a quorum spreads to greater than a quorum or to a quorum or greater, thus violating the Open Meetings Act. And this can also happen not just through email, but by more modern forms of media as well, such as social media. A great and an example that will show you how confusing it can get is Twitter. I don't know how familiar you are with Twitter. I am vaguely proficient. I am almost proficient in Twittering. I think it's called tweeting, so that shows you where I am. So Chairman Doe tweets, without further comment, a link to an online news article about a big issue facing the electrical industry. So we have one person posting an online link without comment. A second board member, Smith, sees the link and then retweets or shares it. And along with that share, posts a comment stating how vital it is that the board take up consideration of this matter. Next, board member Jones comments on Smith's retweet, and she states, we really need to look at Rule 101. So right now what we have is at least three members of an advisory board. Well, then board member Williams comments on Smith's post with the comment, I agree, let's get this done. So now we've got 4. And lastly, board member Johnson gives Smith's post a thumbs up. I think there is an open question as to whether a thumbs up constitutes communication in the sense contemplated by the Open Meetings Act, but I think it's very clear that we have at least 4 members, potentially 5 members engaged in this discussion on social media. So depending on the size of that advisory board, this could be an open meetings violation or not. So one of the things you should do, or some of the things you should do to avoid the situation arising, when you meet in small groups that are less than a quorum and you discuss board business, don't then communicate those discussions to other members. A classic example is often work groups are set up within an advisory board, and those are intentionally set at a size smaller than a quorum to avoid open meetings violations. So if you are a member of a work group, keep your discussions limited to those work group members. And then when there is a formally noticed meeting like today, and you have an item on the agenda for your work group to report, that's your opportunity to share your findings with the other members, not before. Similarly, don't send emails or text messages to a quorum of members, even if you are addressing the emails individually. And be wary about creating posts on social media where there's a likelihood that a quorum of members of the board will join in those discussions. Now, switching gears a little bit, just want to discuss some guidelines for open sessions. An open session is simply an open, properly noticed meeting like today. We mentioned earlier that you'll be presented with an agenda. Your board today is limited to discussing the specific items on the agenda. That will be the case for every meeting. And during the public comment period, which we have set aside, members of the public will be given an opportunity to speak, and the presiding officer has the discretion to set reasonable limits on commenters, usually 3 to 4 minutes, somewhere in that range. If a board member or a member of the public would like to engage in a discussion that isn't on that meeting's agenda, there should be a proposal to place the subject on the agenda for a future meeting. That way, we can go ahead and get our staff to place that agenda on the future meeting. We won't have any potential open meetings violations. Just real quickly, we'll go over some of the penalties and remedies for open meetings violations. Any interested person, including the media, can petition the courts to stop actions taken in violation of the Open Meetings Act. And the Open Meetings Act specifically says that an action taken in violation of the Act is and there are criminal penalties. There are criminal penalties not only associated with the walking quorum aspect, but also for participating or aiding in calling a meeting that is closed to the public. So once again, if a quorum of members engages in deliberation about board business in a setting that is not properly noticed, that is an open meetings violation. That carries penalties, monetary penalties, and potential potential jail time. Moving on to the Administrative Procedure Act, this is a different set of laws. The APA has three purposes: to establish the minimum standards of uniform practice and procedure for state agencies across a number of topics, and more specifically, it provides guidance for public participation and transparency during the rulemaking process. We'll see a bite of that today. And it also governs the contested case process. Our enforcement division, as you know, prosecutes violations of the ACR law. Their processes are governed by the APA. A rule, which I'm sure you're familiar with, a rule is a statement made by a state agency that implements, interprets, or prescribes law or policy. As you know, we have a set of statutes governing the ACR program. We also have a complementary set of rules that interpret and clarify those statutes. A number of sources are out there for rulemaking. When legislative changes come down, they often require a TDLR or any agency to change their existing rules. We get recommendations from advisory board work groups, from full advisory boards. Oftentimes, technical experts or legal experts within the program will recommend rule changes. There are also a couple of more obscure mechanisms. One is a 4-year rule review, which is exactly what it sounds. We're mandated every 4 years to justify, I guess, to readopt our rules to say that they are still needed. And then there's a mechanism called a rule petition, where a person can ask the agency to adopt a rule. Give you a little flow chart here of how the rulemaking process works at TDLR. And I will explain where we are today regarding the applicable codes rule. As you see, initially, there is the idea for a rule, which then turns into the drafting and review of rules that's done in-house. Once those rules the draft of the rules are finalized, the draft rules are sent to the advisory board for your consideration, your first look. Assuming that the board recommends publication of those rules to the public, those rules are filed with the Texas Register for the public to comment on, to review and comment on. Public has 30 days at that point to comment on the proposed rules. The Office of General Counsel will then review the comments received and recommend any rule changes. Today, for our applicable codes rulemaking, we are at the second blue box, which is where the advisory board reviews the rule and the comments submitted and makes a recommendation to the commission. Here, if the advisory board approves of the rule, the advisory board will recommend to our governing commission that that body adopt the rule. The commission will then review the rule filing and the comments and recommend adoption or decline adoption. Let's just assume the rule is adopted. That document is filed with the Texas Register, and then the rules become effective 20 days after filing. And just a few notes about the Public Information Act. You've probably heard this referred to as the Open Records Act. And the Open Records Act is intended to allow transparency and to allow each person to have access about the affairs of government and the official acts of public officials and employees. Interestingly, the Act makes all documents, records, and other information relating to public business open to the public. Obviously, there are some exceptions. Now, public information can include any electronic communication created, transmitted, received, or maintained on any device if it's in connection with official business. So not only are my emails that I type on my work laptop over the work network subject to the Public Information Act, an email that I write regarding my daily work from another email address, which I don't do, but let's just say hypothetically, would also be subject to disclosure under the Public Information Act. And when there is a question, when there is an open question or an ambiguity in the Public Information Act, the courts have said that the act should be construed liberally in favor of granting requests for information. I bring this up just to let you know that the communications that you have with individual staff members at TDLR or others regarding your position as an advisory board member could be subject to disclosure under the Public Information Act. So email accordingly. One thing I'd like to notify you about is that you may receive at some point a request for public information. You may receive it from a member of the public, or you may receive it from a member of the Office of General Counsel or another division. If you receive any email that looks like a request for information, maybe information in your email or paper files that you might have maintained, please forward that response to the Office of General Counsel immediately. I would suggest that you send your request to me immediately, and I'll make sure that it is directed properly. And the reason why it's so urgent is that the law gives TDLR 10 days to respond to the requester of that information. There can be ramifications, I'll just put it that way, if we don't respond within the 10 days, such as we may have to disclose information that otherwise would have been exempted from disclosure. And just a few examples for exceptions to disclosure. Things in emails such as date of birth or personal email address, and especially protected health information, won't be disclosed. Those are subject to exceptions from disclosure. But once again, our best bet to make sure that those items are protected from disclosure is to respond to the open records request within 10 days. Once again, if you receive a request like that, just please direct it to me or to our open.records at tdlr.texas.gov, and we will guide you through the process. And that takes care of the training, and I'm happy to answer any questions. All right, hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings, for taking us through that. And at this time, move on to item number C, approval of the meeting minutes of July 15th. Now, with that said, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the minutes for July 15th. And so do I hear a motion to?
This is Jerry Bittner. I make the motion to accept the minutes.
Dave Yelovich, second.
Ms. Dealey, did you get the names there? You get the names?
Yes, sir, I did.
At this time, I'll open it up for any discussion. Do we have any discussion? With no discussion, we'll take a vote.
Dave Yelovich,
Aye.
David Morris,
Aye.
Flor Lujan,
Aye.
Suzanne Smith,
Aye.
Jerry Bittner,
Aye.
and Dolores Compion.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. So we'll take that now to item F, public comment. And so it's been a while since we had a public comment. So I will turn the floor over to Ms. Kedley Sadler.
Good morning, board members. Can you hear me? I am. Whoops. I think I'm connected twice.
Ms. Sadler, Mary Winston here. I believe that you are good to go now. Thank you, Mr. Fickle.
Great. Thank you so very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, board
Sadler?
members. Yes.
Ms. Adler, before you start, you have 3 minutes starting now.
Thank you. Good morning, board members. My name is Kelly Sadler, and I am the International Code Council Government Relations Senior Regional Manager for Texas. I'm speaking on Agenda Item I, the proposed amendments to adopt the 2018 versions of the ACR program codes. I previously submitted a letter to the board on this issue and will do my best to summarize in my time. As you discuss potential updates to the ACR program's adopted codes, the Code Council respectfully requests this board to analyze the efficiency of adopting 2 different mechanical codes, the Uniform Mechanical Code and the International Mechanical Code. Two mechanical codes are neither logical nor efficient when the International Mechanical Code is the predominant mechanical code adopted in Texas and the US and fully correlates with the 15 international codes, including Texas's statutorily mandated energy conservation, international residential building, and recently adopted international swimming pool and spa code. 2, the Uniform Mechanical Code does not correlate with any of the mandated international building codes in Texas. 3, TDR develops one exam based on 2 different and sometimes conflicting mechanical codes, which is not only inefficient, but also a costly and complex technical burden. 4, this creates unnecessary confusion and difficulty for the Texas mechanical industry. 5, one mechanical code, the International Mechanical Code, is consistent with what TDR adopts for industrialized housing. 6, Texas grants reciprocity to states for ACR licenses that only adopt the International Mechanical Code. 7, one mechanical code, the International Mechanical Code, is consistent with the codes adopted by the Texas Facilities Commission for state buildings. And 8, the Uniform Mechanical Code is not consistent with the building codes required for FEMA public assistance funds, which are the latest editions of the international codes, including the International Mechanical Code. FEMA has actually deemed adherence to the current versions of the international codes to be so important that it will not fund rebuilding or public facilities post-disaster if that construction deviates. I'm bringing up this issue because it's also the issue of unneeded complexity is especially timely in light of Governor Greg Abbott's recent request, where he stated that reforming Texas's occupational licensing rules must be a priority for all state leaders, and sensible licensing rules, when necessary, can protect the public from legitimate harm. But overbroad rules stymie innovation, raise consumer prices, and limit economic opportunity. It is not sensible to create an ACR exam based on 2 different mechanical codes, especially when you cannot easily test individuals on parts of the 2 codes if they are in conflict. Please note that within the International Building Code alone, there are 59 direct references to the International Mechanical Code. The Uniform Mechanical Code does not seamlessly work with any of the other states' adopted codes, is not developed through the same governmental consensus process, and requires numerous technical amendments to hopefully safely correlate with the other required building codes. Just remember, you cannot build a house with a mechanical code on its own. You have to have the other international building codes to provide the foundation, walls, roof for the mechanical to go into. Also, correlation in codes results in enhanced public safety and is a big advantage for designers and installers. Contractors, developers, manufacturers, and businesses value predictability over inconsistency and are accustomed to working with the International Mechanical Code in the majority of Texas jurisdictions. To put this into...
Ms. Adler,
Yes, ma'am.
your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Sadler, thank you for those comments. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
And at that time, we'll move on to the staff reporting item G. And first one is Ms. Hudak. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman, board members. I'm Lisa Hodek, the licensing manager. I think Delia is going to share my report here in just a second. There we go. Thank you. So I'm excited to say that I have 3 new people on my team. Crystal Hall has over 15 years experience with Sears Holding, and she also has some technical knowledge behind her on the repair of mechanical products, so that will certainly help when she works on the air conditioning applications. Kate Nauert has over 7 years with Gerling Community Care, where she maintained client files, managed and scheduled field supervisors, and performed background checks. And Gerald McLeod, who has been a recruiter in the Air Force, and he has matched veterans with Fortune 1000 employees and was also a site manager. They've done a really good job, and especially considering all the COVID plans that we have in place, but they're doing really well. So I'm very proud to have them on my team. And next, I'll just kind of quickly go over the licensing statistics. For the air conditioning contractors, last fiscal year, we had 928 new licenses issued. The renewal licenses issued was over 16,000. The percentage to renew online is at 92%, which is always high. And our overall population for contractors is 17,119. Delia, if you can scroll up, please. Thank you. The registered technicians, new licenses issued for last fiscal year is over 7,200. A majority of those were issued online at just over 7,000. And then renewed licenses issued for last fiscal year was just over 18,000. And our total population count for registered technicians is just over 26,000. The certified technicians is going a little slow, as we had kind of predicted, because some have, they're taking the test. So we're just having very few of those come in. And we issued nine. However, the total overall population is just over 48,000. And then for the total of all license types combined, our total population is just over 48,000 for fiscal year 20. And our the percentage of renewals is always just over 90%, which is great. License holders to get their licenses quicker. It also allows staff to focus on processing the actual applications. And that concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Mary Winston here, TDLR. Lisa, you did have some times that you froze during the presentation, but you were rolling right along. And those things are beyond our control. But as everyone can see, the report is here. And if you do have questions based on the report, I think we got it, but you did freeze a couple of times. That please let us know if you have questions. If you have questions later, please inform Advisory Board staff, and we will get those answers for you.
Lisa, Dave Yelovic, I just had one quick question is, it looks like new licenses are up, from 19 to 20. I'm just curious, the total population went down like 100. It looked like numbers on the individual reports were going up and up and up, but in the total population on the bottom line, did it really go down since last year?
Delia, can you scroll down just a little bit, please? I want to look at, it could be the certified. Yeah, it could be, oh, I'm sorry, go to the certified technicians, scroll up. It could be because of that, because 87 in fiscal year 20, we had 9.
Yeah,
that
I see it
different. And as you know, the requirements for certified technicians changed considerably. Now they have to take a test, whereas before they just applied and then basically took a course. So it's a lot different now. So that's probably it.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is Dolores Campion here. Just a quick observation. It could mean something, could not mean anything. When we're referring to the certified technician, we're issuing them a license with the registration. Should that be the verbiage? Should that be changed to a registration, new registrations, to avoid any confusion on license issue? Because there's technically not a license. Is that correct, or is that a misunderstanding on my piece?
No, that's a very good catch, and you're absolutely right. And I will definitely change that for our next board meeting. So thank you for pointing that out to me.
Thank you so much, Mr. I appreciate the report. And but that's it. Any other questions from any of the board members? All right, then we'll move on to 2, which is Customer Service Division.
Thank you.
Don Robinson.
Mary Winston. Delia, are we having any issues hearing Dawn?
Maybe on mute.
Dawn is on mute.
I'm sorry. I was on mute. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Good morning. This is Dawn Robinson, the Customer Service Manager. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. Currently in front of you, you have your customer service contacts fiscal year 2020. We had a total of over 26,800 phone calls and over 20,600 emails, all broken up in prospective months. Looks like our emails were peak months about March, and the peak phone calls were in March also. I'm here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Members of the board, any questions for Ms. Robinson? No questions? So much.
Thank you.
Quickly move to item number 3. Is that correct? Enforcement Division, Mr. John Medlock.
Good morning, board members. My name is John Medlock. I'm the Chief Prosecutor with the Enforcement Division. First, I'd like to go over a few personnel updates since it's been a while since I've actually been able to give a presentation to you guys. In February of 2020, Debbie Hawkins was promoted to a Legal Assistant Supervisor. Debbie's worked with TDLR for 8 years previously as a legal assistant with the Enforcement Division. March 1st, I was actually promoted to the Chief Prosecutor position from a Senior Prosecutor position that I held. And I've been with the department for a little over 7 years now. To fill my vacant role as a Senior Prosecutor, we had Trevor Thielen, who was promoted on May 1st to that Senior Prosecutor role, and he's been with the department for about 9 years. On August 31st, we actually had a few retirements that were well deserved, but much came with much sadness. Our investigations manager, Greg Dotson, retired after 22 years of service with TDLR. As the enforcement manager, he oversaw a staff of over 42 investigators, and currently that position is posted on our website, and we're seeking candidates for that position. Also on the 31st of August, our legal assistant manager, Daryl Kuntz, retired after 18 years of service with TDLR. Daryl oversaw all of our legal assistants who work with our prosecutors and various other aspects that we handle with the Enforcement Division. He had 33 legal assistants that worked and administrative assistants that worked underneath him. And I know it says that it's posted, but I'll get back to that in just a second because the third of those retirements was Esmer Arguillo, who retired after 21 years of service. She was a senior investigator with the department, primarily working a lot of building, mechanical, and water well cases and some property tax cases. So we want to wish all 3 of them, just the best of luck and thank you for all of the service that they provided for TDLR in those many, many, many years. The reason I didn't want to say about the posting of the legal system manager, because we actually filled that position. Jackie Revilla was actually promoted to that legal assistant manager. She's worked with TDLR for 18 years, previously serving as a legal assistant supervisor with our enforcement division. So congratulations to her, and congratulations to those that have retired. On the next page, we'll start kind of getting into some of the statistics a little bit. As you can see here, we have a breakdown between the program, ACR, and TDLR as a whole. These are our performance measures in this first category. These are what we're judged on by the legislature to how well we're doing, not only as an agency, but within this program. So as you can see, in fiscal year 2020, which ran from September 2019 all the way to August 31st of 2020, we opened about 771 cases. We opened a little over 10,400 cases. And for both programs, it was a little bit lower than normal for AC. It was only about 7% of what we opened as TDLR as a whole. Normally we're 8-9%. I think some of that has to do with some of the lockdowns and shutdowns due to COVID. But so we'll have to take a look at that this time next year to see if that really was what the trend was. Average date of close was about 240 days. It's a little bit higher than the typical case at TDLR, but if you can think about it, that makes sense because a lot of our cases deal with mechanical integrity type issues where we need an expert to review those issues to kind of give us a breakdown of what code sections were violated. So sometimes that takes a little bit of time. And right now, Bill is kind of a one-man band doing that for us. So, sometimes with 700 cases being open, that's a lot of sometimes cases to review. But as you can see, of the cases resolved within 6 months, it's a little over half, which is good. And the cases resulted in disciplinary actions about 10%. That's about typical for this program. In average for TDLR, it runs about 12 to 13% for all of our cases in TDLR. There's still a little over 740 cases pending currently. If you look at the graph, you can kind of see the breakdown of where the cases came from in the fiscal year. A little over 60% were consumer-related cases. About 7% were departmental type cases that we opened either through leads that we had gotten from other industry contacts or just in the course of our own investigation of a consumer complaint, we decided to open up a secondary case. And a little over a third of those cases that we have in this program are criminal history review type cases where we're actually taking a look at someone's criminal history and making the determination that they're not fit for licensure. If you look at the case outcomes, the first three categories are the different types of orders that we have in this program: commission orders, default orders, and agreed orders. So as you can see, there was one commission order. So that means that the process went from we sent a notice of alleged violation, they requested a hearing, went to a hearing before the State Office of Administrative Hearings, issued a proposal for decision, and then went before the commission, and the commission ruled on the case. Default orders, about 45 of those cases were default orders. Those are those cases that basically come where we issue the notice of alleged violations, and we just don't hear a response from the respondent in those cases. And so our executive director will sign off on a default order. And then lastly, there were 27 agreed orders that we signed. Those are those cases where we issue that notice of alleged violations, and then that respondent gets in contact with us, admits to a violation, and pays some sort of administrative penalty, and sometimes is also accepts a license sanction. For the program as a whole, we list a little over $250,000 worth of penalties assessed in the fiscal year of 20. About almost $70,000 worth of collection. This is about 27%. A little low for this program as compared to TDLR as a whole. We're at about 55% collection rate. But that also could be due to some COVID-related issues. As you can see, we had 4 licenses revoked. Those come from either agreed or default orders. No licenses that were suspended, and these are a result of program-related cases. The next line item, the license denied or revoked, those are criminal history cases. So we revoked or denied applications in 11 instances of those cases. Those were instances where their criminal history just did not, the person wasn't fit for licensure based on what their criminal history was. As you can see, Now, it's a combination of cases that had either insufficient evidence, the complaints were withdrawn, we informally resolved them through other negotiated measures, or warnings. Maybe there was a violation, but they came in some kind of corrective action, so we just issued a warning. Another line item that you guys have always requested, I want to take a look at, is consumer restitution through negotiated settlement. A lot of times, those cases that end in informally resolved, it's because of a negotiated restitution to the consumer. As you can see, almost $22,000 was issued in fiscal year 20. It's about 12% of the whole total that TDLR in all of our programs was able to negotiate. So on the next page, you'll just kind of see kind of like the funnel effect. We get lots of complaints that come into the department, but as you can see, very few actually result in disciplinary actions. Of the complaints received, a little over 970 complaints received, that down to, we only opened up 471 cases. Now, basically, what happened to those other cases? Well, sometimes what ends up happening is that the person is complaining about price or complaining about something else. It just is not what our statute regulates. So we ended up just closing those complaints. And if we open it, it becomes a case open. So that's why you can see a difference in the number there. And as you can see, as it keeps funneling down, we resolved 341 in the fiscal year as informally resolved, only issued 121 NOAVs, and then only took 47 disciplinary actions. And those are all the cases in 20. Like I was talking about earlier, these are the top 10 violations of complaints at opening. So complaint comes in, there is an allegation that there's been a violation of the laws and rules, and so a case gets open. So that's what this count number is. So as you can see, criminal history, mechanical integrity, and contracting without a license. Those are your three primary drivers in this program. And as you can see, those are the three big ones. And as you can see, the misrepresentation, advertising, they make up kind of the next few categories, and then some no license numbers, either on invoices or ads, make up a fewer percent of that. So, and then the very next page, you'll see the top 10 violations that resulted in disciplinary action. So these are the cases that have gone all the way through the intake section, through the investigation process, and the prosecutor has issued the notice of alleged violations, and then some sort of order, either commission, default, or agreed order has been issued. And these are the top 10 resulting disciplinary actions that we sought. Vast majority is still contracting without a license. That's somebody that either is under license, meaning that they have an AC technician, they're offering to provide services, and they're not attached to a contractor, or they're just flat don't have a license at all. Criminal history cases, as you can see, 12, and the mechanical integrity code issue, again, are kind of the big three drivers with these programs. Kind of with that said, I'll kind of take it. These are some of the case highlights, some of the types of cases that we have dealt with over the past fiscal year. The very first one is Jacob Moya. So on October 3rd of 2019, our executive director, Brian Francis, signed an agreed order revoking a respondent's air conditioning contractor license and denying his license application. So this is one of those criminal history type cases where, based on the respondent's criminal history, we sought to take action to deny that renewal, to revoke his license because he currently had a technician license, and deny that renewal application. Part of the reason is because he answered no to the question of, since your most recent license application, or since your most recent license was issued, have you been convicted of a crime or placed on deferred adjudication for any felonies or misdemeanors other than minor traffic violations? He answered no to that. The fact was he had two separate cases of felony theft. Those actually were both from different supply houses. So he had actually really requested a hearing. We were going to go to it, but eventually I think he kind of realized that he wasn't probably going to win that case. So he actually accepted the department's determination and agreed to the revocation in that case. The next case is the respondent was Oilfield Technician Services, LLC. November 1, our executive director signed an agreed order imposing a fine of $4,000 for two separate incidences of unlicensed air conditioning contracting. In this particular case, the consumer actually had an Oklahoma license, and he thought that reciprocity applied automatically, which is why they were providing air conditioning services when we contacted them, they understood that they needed to actually get a Texas license in order to be performing those services, and they have actually paid the entirety of that fine. The next case is the respondent Enrique Hernandez. On January 16th of 2020, the executive director signed another agreed order imposing a fine of $5,000. Now, Mr. Fernandez had a history of failing to obtain permits or get final inspections pursuant to the municipality's code and regulations for 50 different jobs. And then he also only had the R endorsement. He did not have either the combined or the E endorsement on his license. And there were numerous incidences. And this is kind of a result of a departmental case where we had been told by city officials that this was going on. So we took a look at it. They helped provide some data points for us. So we could see that he had over 300 incidences of performing work with environmental type work with only the R endorsement. And he was assessed an administrative penalty of $5,000. I know that it says that he has paid $3,400 of that because he's on a payment plan. As of this morning, he's up to paying $3,825. So he's on track with this payment plan, which is not always the case, but it's good in this case. The very next case, respondent Michael Craig Davidson. Now, this is one of those default orders. So this results from the fact that we issued that NOAV, as we call them, notice of alleged violation, and the respondent just did not contact us back after we sent it out. He was issued a fine of $13,000 for 3 separate incidences of offering to perform air conditioning license contracting without a license and 1 instance of using a contractor's license that was not assigned to him. So he was placing advertisements as well using those license numbers not affiliated with him. Mr. Davidson actually had previously was a contractor, had his license revoked due to a felony conviction. And a guy he had previously worked with, he was using that license without permission, which is why you have that violation of using someone else's license. Now, this because of the default order, we haven't collected anything on it, but as typical with an amount this big, once the default order is issued, we try to collect. If we can't, then we'll turn it over to the Attorney General's office for collections, and that's currently where this case resides. The last case is respondent Darren Butler. On August 28th of 2020, the executive director signed a default order again for $26,500. This is a result of multiple cases, including 6 separate incidences of performing air conditioning installation without a license and also advertising without a license. These were all 6 separate addresses and an ad on Craigslist, which we found. Again, no money has been collected because recently the default order was just recently finalized. So we're in those initial collection periods through the department, and then most likely it will be turned over to the Attorney General's office because the amount being that high. Lastly, just a little bit of stakeholder outreach. It's not as much as what we normally do, but that's obviously due to COVID, and we had to kind of shut down those kinds of activities with meetings being held. Hopefully we can get some of those back and going in more virtual formats. But back in August 15th, 2019, one of our investigator supervisors, Harrigan DeMose, attended the Texas Air Conditioning Contractors Association in Houston, their monthly meeting. She spoke to those members there and the audiences about what TLR's mission and kind of our activities that we do on behalf of licensees. Apparently some of the members there expressed interest in conducting a departmental sting in the Houston area. And typically we do 2 to 3 stings per year, usually a very big one in June. But again, because of COVID, we were not able to conduct any of those this year. Hopefully, once the pandemic kind of subsides, we can get back to doing some of those things that we do because they do produce a lot of cases. And I think it does serve the industry well to try to, root out the unlicensed and the underlicensed element that is still in this program. One of the last things we had was January 21 of 2020. One of our investigators, Tony Gattaca, and Mr. Bill Weatherly, who is our expert in this program with the department and our regulatory programs management division, They attended the Houston area of ACCA, and Mr. Weatherly and Gattaca, Investigator Gattaca engaged with the president, and they had they informed him kind of again what of our missions and our activities behalf on licensees, and also Mr. Weatherly, he made the presentation about different regulations that we have here at the department, and he also showed the undercover sting. Like when we usually do one of those big stings in June, we usually do it in conjunction with the local news there, just to kind of promote the unlicensed activity and to make the public aware that, make sure that you're checking out who you're calling out there, that they have licenses, that they have the insurance, and all the things that they need to come and work on these systems. So they showed that clip from the KHOU news presentations of that undercover sting we had done a couple of years ago in June of 17 in that area. So looks like there were apparently 40 attendees at that meeting. And again, if there's we always tell at these meetings, if you guys ever have any questions or concerns, feel free to contact the department. I know Mr. Whitley's happy to take those calls. I know our investigators are happy to take those calls and try to get you information you need. So that will conclude my presentation. So if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer anything that you have.
I'll open up the floor to any board members who may have any questions at this. Dolores Compion, I only have about 15 questions. So one of them that caught my attention was the one of the Mr. Hernandez, right? And his, I know it was taken into consideration, even though he has an environmental license, he doesn't have an R license, and his perplexity to pull permits. What was the rationale at the time? Is it our penalty matrix that kept the fine at a limited number, or this kind of gives us a little bit of dialogue, and that's really the only question I had.
Yeah, I perfectly understand the question. So yeah, it's a combination of that. We could have gone against him for each one of these separate violations, right? I mean and hit him even at $1,000. That's 300. That's a lot of capital that he would have to spend. So when we engaged with him, we kind of expressed the need and the necessity that not only do you need to pull permits in the areas, but you also need to follow up and do the final inspection, because a lot of people may see that there's a permit pull, but they don't know that it's past inspection. The other aspect that kind of went into this is there was no real consumer complaints with the work that he did. This is more of building officials kind of looking at, we've got a whole lot of permits that we haven't closed out here, and they kind of reached out to us, so we kind of did that investigation. And one of the main drivers that we have when we look at cases is what is the consumer harm and public safety. And frankly, only with this case, this was more of a city kind of saying, hey, can you kind of help us out with and send a message to this particular contractor to not only that you need to get the right endorsement for the work that you're doing, but the need and necessity to get permits, one, pulled, and two, closed out. So that's kind of what some of the rationale went into it.
Well, that kind of opens up a little bit of Pandora's box of questions. So, but I'll limit that to that one question. Any other questions from any board members? All right, at this time, thank you, Ms. Medlock. I appreciate the presentation. It was very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item number 4, Ms. Rebecca.
Good morning, Chair Compion. Advisory Board members, welcome Advisory Board Member Smith. My name is Rebecca Artemis. I am with the TDLR Education and Examination Division, and I will be delivering our report today. And the second slide, actually, if you could please, Delia, gives a little bit more of a snapshot of our examinations by, this is in total, but if you go to the next slide, it gives you first quarter, second quarter, third, and fourth by the actual examination type. As you see, third quarter, we were, the volume is a lot lower because, of course, everyone knows the examination sites were shut down for a little bit. So with that being said, when PSI opened back up, the numbers increase. So you'll see, yes, the pass rate's a little higher, but that's because we had less attempts at the examinations. So it gives you a snapshot for that small period, but the previous quarters and of course the final quarter is kind of the more telling sign of the more accurate pass rate there. When we were allowed to open up the examination sites, now PSI is operating at 50%. We understand that there's a very large backlog at the moment, but we have asked them to work with the third-party sites to kind of allow some more flexibility to get people tested. And we're having some success, but yes, it is still a little, we are still a little limited at, like the rest of the state. We're not open at 100%, neither are the examination sites, and it's a little hard for them to open up and also have the 6 feet social distancing. So we are definitely doing the best we can to get everyone scheduled in a timely manner. But we know that at this time, if you're calling today to try to schedule for an examination tomorrow, in the larger cities, it's probably not going to happen, but we are definitely going to do the best we can to try to get things moving in a positive way to get more and more folks scheduled to take their examination. One of the other things that I wanted to share with you, if you could go ahead and keep scrolling for me, Delia, please. That's just our continuing education courses that we had approved, and along those lines for COVID, several classroom continuing education courses were given the option to change to online. We didn't ask the providers to make any changes, just the delivery method to internet due to COVID and folks not being able to travel and meet in person. For the examinations, we've worked on extending some of these eligibilities as well to give people a little bit more time to get into the examinations. We've been working with licensing to make sure that we've extended it and sending them over to PSI, giving these folks their extensions so that there is not that additional pressure that, if they can't get into the site because they're so backlogged, we're going to give them a little bit more time to go in and take their examinations. We did meet for our very first virtual exam review committee meeting with our subject matter experts to go over the updated coded reference material so that we can begin the referencing process on our examinations to be ready when those new codes are adopted. And finally, one of the things I wanted to share with you is something that you had asked prior from us was the comparison. Could you scroll to the last one there for me, Delia? Thank you. The comparison of repeat and first time. So on the top there, you're going to see the past, how many candidates passed? 251 for a 48% pass rate of first time, 250 failed with a 52% pass rate. So we kind of broke that down for you because we knew that that was something that you were interested in. And you'll see on the second grouping, the numbers are a little off because it may have some carryover from the previous fiscal year. When we ran this was for fiscal year 2020, which is from September 1/19 to the end of August 2020. And then that final little grouping there that I wanted to share with you is the average time that a candidate takes when they're sit for their examination. That was something else that the board had inquiries about, where the items is actually how many questions are on the examination. So for commercial refrigeration A, they'd have 120 items and they are given 240 minutes, and the average examinee takes 213 of those minutes. So that's how all of that is broken down there for you. I just wanted to share this with you so that it'll give you an additional snapshot, because I knew that you had requested this at a previous meeting, and I am free to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Any questions from any of the board members? I only have one question, and it's more of a request. If it's possible in any shape, form, or fashion to be able to retrieve the third category for the test takers. I know that there's been a little bit of discussion on that. If it is possible, if there are, let me make sure I ask this correctly. Who's taking it for the third time, and what do those numbers look like? If it's possible, just humbly requesting if you can draw that data for us for the next meeting, I would appreciate that. Other than that, thank you so much for your presentation. Appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to number 5, regulatory program. Mr. William Weatherly.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, board members. And I'm going to give you kind of a calendar year update, since we haven't been able to talk for a while. So I'll start with personnel updates. And up until February of this year, I had an assistant that was multi-program specialist, Jeff Nielsen, and he left the agency in February to take a position in the private sector. We and I very much miss Jeff's good work reviewing enforcement cases and with on-site investigations and inspections. Current projects, just to kind of let you know my day-to-day, what happens. I have this is an average of 4 to 6 public inquiries from customer service per week. So they send those to me, and a lot of times it's licensing questions or code rules or consumer info. I get questions from consumers from time to time. So I try to answer those, them the same day they come in, just to be as responsive as possible. Then also average of 2 to 3 licensing reviews per week. And that's from our licensing division. And most of the time it's out of state and even out of the country. And so we're trying to determine if their experience and their education is up to the Texas level for them to be able to take the exam. And so, maybe 50% of the time it is, and I work with those folks in licensing for that. And then a big part of my job is ongoing enforcement case reviews and assistance to enforcement investigators. And as John Medlock said, I am it. Okay, so, but I try to streamline that as much as possible. I'm working with the investigators to help them, and it's mechanical integrity and code and rules. I was able to do one FaceTime virtual inspection in Tyler. We had one that was a little complicated, and so working with the investigator, we were able to get the homeowner to do a FaceTime for us and go through the house and look at it. And so that worked out pretty good, since we've been shut down for COVID. And then I just provide technical assistance for all the programs and divisions as needed, when they call. Rebecca told you a little bit about exam reviews, and we've had 2 this calendar year. The first one, the last in-person meeting, was in January, the 14th through the 16th. It's held here in Austin. And that's made up of our subject matter experts, our stakeholders from the industry, contractors, code enforcement folks, and educators. And they all have an air conditioning license. And in January, we were looking to align the questions to our new technical reference. As you may know, modern refrigeration and air conditioning is our technical reference. And they came out with a new edition, 21st edition. So we were aligning the exam questions with that new edition. And then we were needing another subject matter expert, and we were able to recruit Mr. George Stuckey, and I was very happy to get him on the board. I worked with him in the mid-90s when I worked for the Train Company, and he is now the vice president for a Kilgore company that's a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing company here in Austin, Houston, Dallas. And it's George has held his air conditioning license since 1985, 1986. He came on board, passed the test, and has been licensed ever since we've had a license, for that. So that was really good to get him on board, and he had a lot to add to our discussions. As Rebecca said, we had our first virtual exam review in September. In attendance were all our subject matter experts. And then the purpose of this one was to review the underperforming exam questions, okay, and see if we wanted to change those questions so they would actually come up on the test, and also to align the questions with the 2018 ICC and IATMO codes, And by the way, if you have questions as we go, you can certainly stop me. I don't mind at all. I can answer questions as we go. I also had a meeting with Doug, our General Counsel, Doug Jennings, and I met with Shirley Ellis of the State Energy Conservation Office. And we had some questions on the last meeting about the alignment of the International Energy Conservation Code. That is one that is adopted also by the state energy. And we have that, as part of the ICC code. So we spoke with her. Shirley Ellis is basically the code expert for SECO, and she is actually works for the Energy Systems Labs, which is part of Texas A&M system. There's a lot of knowledge there. She's done it for a long time, and we had a very good discussion. We can talk some more about that if you have questions later. And then I was able to submit an article to the National Association of State Contractors Licensing Agencies. They were putting out a request for articles. That's a national organization made up of basically organizations like TDLR. And we submitted an article that highlighted our new air conditioning restricted license and our state prison outreach that I did back in February. And just to go over the outreach a little bit, I had a busy January and February until we got shut down. But in January, went to Houston, spoke with the Texas Air Conditioning Contractors Association down there. I think John went over that a little bit in the enforcement spiel that he gave you. And then January the 22nd, the very next day, I went from Houston to San Antonio. They had a large expo, an HVAC expo, that was put together by the Texas Air Conditioning Contractors Association there in San Antonio. We put a booth together. We had handouts. We answered questions, and we discussed the ACR program to anybody that was interested. And it was a pretty well-attended, large expo. I enjoyed that. Then in February, 17th and 18th, I got invited to a new home construction seminar in McAllen, Texas. And I teamed up with Jason Vanderveer. He's with SPEAR, which is the South Texas Partnership for Energy Efficiency as a Resource. That's a mouthful right there, but I had to write it down so I could say it. But they are a nonprofit that works with SECO, the State Energy Conservation Office, as well. And they promote adopting the codes in all the municipalities and just keeps everybody, they provide training and just basically, the municipalities can adopt codes as they see fit, pretty much, as long as they are as stringent as the state. But he and I had a very good presentation down there. We also had a little field trip. We went to a new construction area, residential area, and went very well, very informative. And then the last thing I'm very proud of that we did, I was invited to Texas Department of Criminal Justice, the Crane Unit in Gatesville, Texas, and I presented the TDLR program and the air conditioning and refrigeration program out for the Female Felon Placement Project. They have this was through the Wyndham School District. And if you're not aware of that, the Wyndham School District was set up just for the prison system in Texas, and they have various trade training, and air conditioning is one of them. And if the folks, the prisoners, are within 5 years of their discharge, then they can participate in these programs. And I got to tell you, I also attended and brought with me Senior Prosecutor Trevor Thielen, and so I spoke about the air conditioning program and TDLR and how we might operate that way. And then Trevor spoke about criminal background review procedures, and that was the most attentive audience I think I've ever had when speaking. They were very, very excited and very, very responsive, asked questions, and especially Trevor. These folks, they wanted to start a new life, and they were proud of what they were learning. And I got to tell you, if we want to stop the recidivism, this is the way to do it. Give them something to do, and something to feel proud of. So that went really well. And then March 17th, we were restricted to home, and everybody's working from home pretty much except for essential personnel. And so I haven't done any field reviews or inspections since then, but we've managed to do quite well. Had to set up home office here, but I have a full day every day, and it's worked much better than I thought. And my hat's off to all our IT folks at TDLR. They've done a fantastic job keeping all of us running and going. So that's kind of my recap of this year, and open for questions.
Board members, any questions for Mr. Weatherly? Well, I actually do. I am very familiar with the Windham School District, and I do have a question. You may or may not be able to answer this. It's kind of a little bit out of the box. There's a law out there that kind of directly kind of conflicts with providing that program within the prison system, and then the actual potential employer has some guidelines to meet as well. Was that discussed?
Well, I think I understand your question. A new bill was passed in the last legislature called the restricted license, and we talked about that a bit. And a restricted license is an avenue for someone that would not necessarily be eligible for a license. Let's say a license or a registration, say a registered a technician wanted to register and go to work. Okay, normally he would be prevented from doing that. Well, the restriction could be for the first year, you can only work on new construction projects. You can't go into homes. You can't do any residential work. Now, their supervisor would have to sign off on that, and it would also go on their license on the card saying that. And then that gives them a way to break in. And we talked a little bit about that. Does that basically answer your question?
Yes, sir. That law came about several years back, and I don't know if this is pertinent or not, but I actually retired from the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, so very familiar with all the internal works there. I have another question. Reciprocity. Is there currently any discussion with current hurricane disasters along the Gulf Coast? With I know we have some reciprocity with Alabama, I think. How does that look like for Florida and Mississippi and Louisiana? If you have any insight to that.
Well, that is kind of a slow process, and I have started with Louisiana, which I think would be very important for the coast. I think they would be a very good fit for a reciprocity, and it is Doug Jennings and I have worked on that a little bit. It has to go up through the commission and the governor's office, and so I'm very high on that. I'm willing to work with. I think Oklahoma would be, if we got the surrounding states, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, if possible. I mean, that would be a big help, I think. And then the Gulf states, as you said. So I'm very much open to working that way. Because of COVID and other things that have happened, not only to us and other states, has been kind of put on hold or slowed down a bit. Doug might have something to say about that as well, but it is something we're working on, Mr. Compion, and I champion it.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherly. I appreciate it. If there's no any other further questions from any of the board members, well, thank you for your presentation. Really appreciate it. And we'll move on to item number 6, the executive office. Mr. Gonzalez.
Presiding Officer Compion, actually Mary Winston. I will begin the report today. And as Deputy Executive Director, David Gonzalez will wrap things up for us. And we actually have our another Deputy Executive Director, Ms. Christina Kaiser, present as well. But I will begin this morning by saying good morning to you again. I'm the advisory board attorney bringing you this executive report. I want to begin this morning by talking about TDLR's COVID-19 response. For this short synopsis, I'll be referring to TDLR's website page. TDLR takes action in response to the COVID-19 threat. Our response has been both internal and external. Externally, we continue to act as a conduit of sorts, an artery of information, relaying that information as it becomes available from the Department of State Health Services, the Centers for Disease Control, and the Office of the Governor. On this page, you will find that we have links to all of Governor Abbott's executive orders. And for those who signed up to receive emails from TDLR, you began receiving those emails related to your program of interest and COVID-19 requirements around May 1st. Internally, TDLR staff has just continually shown us what our core values are. They have accountable actions. We've all worked hard to provide as best as we can exceptional customer service in a really difficult time. We've done this while having integrity and trying to lead with innovation, open and free communication, respect, and fortunately for us, teamwork. We have all worked wherever we are, remotely, in the office, to just provide the best service that we can and to make this transition personally for each of us as smooth as possible, and externally for our licensees and the citizens of Texas as smooth as possible. In March, I want to second Bill's kudos for our IT staff. Our IT staff, led by our executive team, moved with unimaginable speed to relocate as many in-office staff as possible to remote working. Again, everyone has not been able to do this. We still have mail that comes through. We still have checks that have to come through. We have financial things that are required to be conducted in office. We socially distance when necessary, and we also maximize all of our remote platforms, and we've learned and incorporated new remote platforms. A big thank you again to Mr. Michael Fickle that allow us to communicate within the agency and to conduct external meetings such as these. This has not been without internal and very personal disruption. We've seen staff members who've become personally ill and who have had family members to become ill. We've temporarily closed our offices to have deep cleanings, but again, we've really shown a tremendous spirit to serve the public in spite of any of our setbacks. And our core values have really shown through. Everyone has stepped up. It's really been amazing. B, TDLR strategic plan. This can also be found on our website. This is something that we provide, and it's a requirement. We provided our strategic plan to the governor's office on June 1st of this year, and it's entitled Leading Texas to a Brighter, Stronger Future. This planning document is a roadmap that provides staff direction and public direction for who we are, what we do, and how we do it. The plan introduces our new anti-trafficking unit, discusses the Sunset Commission process, and includes information on how TDLR deals with disaster preparedness planning. The plan incorporates the input of commission members, advisory board members, staff, and the public. For those of us who are familiar with the agency, this is the thing, the thing where we generally travel around the state and ask questions, including, what do we do well? What can we do better? And if you were king or queen for a day, what is the one law, rule, or policy of TDLR that you would change? Well, COVID-19 halted that state travel, that personal touch that TDLR really prefers to give. But we came about it a different way. We crafted questionnaires, we conducted surveys, and we held virtual strategic planning meetings so we could gather public input. We really put a lot of work into our strategic plan, even be it remotely, and we want it to be thoughtful, innovative, and functional. And it is available for your viewing pleasure on our website if you've not already had a chance to take a look at it. This brings me to the Sunset Commission Report update. Sunset staff began their review of our agency on last year, and this is something that all state agencies do have to go through. The Sunset staff took a deep dive into all of TDLR processes, procedures, how we operate. And this process is not meant to be complimentary. It's designed to critically and meticulously assess the functionality of the agency and to note the places where we can do better and offer the Sunset staff solutions. Sunset staff worked extensively on their report. I think it's about 118 pages. They observed the agency over several months, interviewed staff members, commission members, advisory board members, and they collected comments from the public, which are still available, and you can still make comments on the Sunset Commission website. All of this information, they drafted their staff report. TDLR will become a better agency from this deep dive. Next steps, all agencies who went under sunset review now can participate in a hearing, a public hearing. The date for TDLR has not been set. We will keep you posted. This process, where previous hearings were anticipated at the end of the summer, COVID-19 and our need for social distancing has moved things along. So we don't know when that next date will be where TDLR will be before the Sunset Commission for a hearing, but we will let you know. TDLR at this point has done all it can do by participating and providing all the information to Sunset staff, and we've also provided our response. Public members, all members actually, can still provide their comments on the Sunset Commission website. So that is still available and open. Lastly, for me, I want to touch on our communication outreach statistics. This is a snapshot. For the past 6 months, ending September 30th, the Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Contractors website has had, Delia, thank you for sharing, almost 200,000 views. That's an average of 1,088 per day. 42% of those visitors accessed our site from a desktop computer. 56% did so from a smartphone, and 2% from a tablet. That little snapshot of information about how the different programs assess the information allows staff internally to know what's our best method of delivering the information and what IT solutions we can develop. The top reasons for visiting the site: number 1, how to apply for a contractor license; 2, exam information; 3, forms and publications; 4, applying for a technician certificate; and 5, information on applying for a technician registration. This is the end of my portion of the report. Mr. David Gonzalez would now like to have just a couple of steps to kind of sum it all up for you. So I'm going to turn it over to David, if that is okay with you, Mr. Campion.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that excellent report, Mary Winston. This is David Gonzalez with TDLR. I really appreciate the opportunity to be the color commentator. Again, thank you for taking the lead on the report. Just a couple of points on the COVID-19 response. This is an update. Y'all were actually able to have a meeting in July, and we have made some progress with a return to office, but we've been very cautious about it. And there's no doubt that COVID has changed our world. The agency will not be the same from this time forward. We will be looking at telecommuting and how we use our space and hoteling, all the virtual meetings. It has changed our agency. And so I want to let you know that just really proud, again, extending the kudos to our frontline staff who have continued, like finance and licensing, continue to go to the office to get the work done that needs to be done, but allowing us to explore other options to make ourselves more efficient, more effective, while while still keeping the safety of our staff. So thank you for that. The game plan, our strat plan is our game plan. It is a state mandated process and we do it every couple of years, but Brian's really into sports. So if you have not read the game plan, you need to read the game plan. And it's so important because we actually had to turn in our legislative appropriations request, which is tied to that game plan. The monies that we receive in order to do our work, the monies that we collect in order to do our work is tied directly to that game plan. So knowing what our game plan is going to be very important in the future. The most significant thing, and I'll just bring it to y'all's attention, is the Texas licensing system. Last biennium, we actually requested monies for phase one, and we've made great progress. We're doing the work right now in order to be successful and complete a new Texas licensing system that would replace the 9 disparate systems that have us doing all this work. We're going to need monies for phase two. And so that's a substantial amount of monies. We're keeping our fingers crossed that the legislature is going to see the importance of it, but they've asked us to tighten our belts and actually make budget cuts. So it's one of those things that we're on the edge of our seat to make sure we're making responsible requests, but making a good case for the things that need to happen as part of our game plan. And lastly, sunset hearing participation. It's critical. It's a very inclusive process, but because of these COVID times, Sunset is still trying to figure out exactly how this is going to happen. And with an agency our size, with all the different programs, y'all are going to need to stay tuned, just like we are, to the Texas Sunset Commission's website to figure out how they're going to do it, because they may have to scale things back depending on how things go with COVID. If you want to see a successful display of how they've done it, you can actually go to the House of Representatives website and see the hearing as it was held for a couple of other agencies. They actually had virtual, it was a blended version, virtual and in-person testimony. I'm not sure what Sunset's going to be able to accommodate for us when we have our hearing. Sometime between September and January is what's on their website. But y'all are going to have to stay tuned just like we are. But I do encourage you to do so. And as they give out information, we'll pass it on as well. I've been promoting participation in these public hearings process, but as things change, as we find out more information about what the expectations from the legislature are and from Sunset are, they could change the formats, and y'all just need to be aware of that. And that's all I had to ask. Thank you very much, Mary, for the report.
I think you went into a freeze mode there, Mr. Gonzalez, but look, thank you for that wonderful report. I do miss the interaction there at the office and my ability to stop at Buc-ee's and bring the staff some goodies from there. So it has, taken that
We
away
missed
from
you
me.
too.
So I look forward to the days. Like you said, it's we're not sure how this pandemic is ever, what are we going to come back to, some kind of normality, if that's even a word anymore. So with that said, I'm going to move quickly to item H. And with that said, Mr. Medlock and Mr. Weather.
Well, I'll be glad to talk about this, the home warranty situation. And I think you all wanted to have a discussion about that.
Well, let me make what I wanted to do with this type of presentation was to kind of educate the new board members and ourselves on what that process looks like. And so take it away. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill Weatherly, Air Conditioning Refrigeration Chief. Well, home warranty is something that the situation I was not aware of before I came to the agency. The last 30 years, most of my work, I ran a large commercial air conditioning plumbing company and large residentials, and we didn't get into this, but I got to tell you, over half of the enforcement cases that I assist the investigators with start with a home warranty company. And the way this works, and I'm going to give you some anecdotal examples. Homeowner has a warranty and his air conditioner goes out, stops cooling. And there are companies that actually I found out specialize in working with these home warranty companies. So the home warranty company provides the insurance, if you will, for the breakdowns. So they send out their enrolled air conditioning contractor. Okay, he goes out and looks, and makes the assessment. They have to basically count on them. They're the experts. Well, as it will, almost 75 to 80% of the time, it's a bad evaporator coil. Okay. And in my 40 years in the business, that is not something that comes up. If your evaporator coil wasn't a problem from the factory, it's usually going to be there for the life of the equipment. And so, all right, the bad evaporator coil. So here we go. The home warranty company will provide this evaporator coil at no charge. Well, the home warranty company says, okay, we can do that, but you have to bring your system up to code, to current code. And that's the catch phrase right there. And so it's amazing how with different companies, different warranty companies, it always adds up to about $1,500 to $2,000. And it's a checklist of, okay, you need a drain pan replaced, you need your condensate removal system upgraded. We have a transition here. You have to put locking caps on your refrigeration service ports outside, various things, and they add up. Okay. Well, when I get these cases, then I work with an investigator, and by code, they are misrepresenting what is required of the customer. You do not have to bring the system up to current codes as long as it's not a safety issue or a hazard. If it was built by the 2009 code, that's all you have to go by. It doesn't have to be brought up to that. But they kind of hold them for ransom, and they say, okay, we can't do this job. So the customer thought that they had, minimal outlay, but they're looking at $1,500, $2,000 to just get their unit fixed. Now, when I've investigated these things and we brought a witness contractor in, a lot of times they've misrepresented the problem even. And on the worst cases, they leave, the system still doesn't work. They paid $2,000 and, they're stuck. So they file a complaint. And I've had, and I'm not kidding you, I've had an average of one a month that way. And I'm going to drag Mr. Medlock in here and let him tell you what he's seen on the enforcement side. And it's a real problem. The other thing is we don't have any jurisdiction over the home warranty companies. They're regulated by the Texas Real Estate Commission, TREC. We do hold the, license, the air conditioning contractors. So we try to work it that way. But that is what I've seen. Okay.
Yeah, it is John Malik again, Chief Prosecutor. Bill's absolutely right. When you go through and read these complaints, I called my home warranty company. This AC contractor came out there, told me my, evaporator coil was bad, but that my system lacked a float switch, drain pan, basically the laundry list of things that Bill just named off. And the insurance company won't pay for the replacement of the evaporator coil unless and until you bring all these other things up to code. Well, as Bill said, that's not what the code says. So we do go after these AC contractors for that. I personally took a case. Go ahead, Mr. Compion.
Someone be so kind to put their microphone on mute. That's some feedback on my end. Not sure if the rest of the team can hear it. Ms. Weatherby, I think that'd be you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'll start again just in case the feedback covered everything I was saying. What I was saying is Mr. Weatherly is correct. I mean, if you go through and read these complaints, that's what they say. I called my home warranty company because my system wasn't cooling. They sent a contractor out here. Contractor said there was a hole in my evaporator coil, something along those lines. We need to replace it. But in order for us to replace it and have the insurance company pay for it, you're going to have to bring the rest of your system up to code. You're going to need that float switch, all the laundry list of things that Bill went through. And it's just simply not the case. I've actually prosecuted a case through the SOA process, the State Office of Administrative Hearing process, where a contractor went out there and said, you need all these additional items. Like Bill said, it was about a little over $1,000 in this particular case and they wrote on there on the invoice, upgrades to code. And luckily that homeowner sought a second opinion before actually spending that money. That second opinion said, no, you don't have to do all those additional things. As a matter of fact, like Bill said, your evaporator coil was fine. And the mere statement of that all these things are required by code is what Bill was saying. It's a misrepresentation for the need for services, which our laws and rules do address. And the ALJ sided with us, and so did the commission. And that contractor did pay a $3,000 fine for that mere statement, even though no money actually ever ended up transferring hands other than the initial $75 service fee that these contractors receive for coming out there and taking a look at the system. So it is a problem. It's something I think that hopefully with education, we can help eliminate, and not only education of the contractors, but also education of the consumers as well. If we can get the word out there that make sure that the people that are coming out there are licensed and insured with us. And at the same time, if something doesn't seem right, it's okay to ask for a second opinion. You can actually go back to some of those home warranty companies and say, hey, you know what, I just don't, I need a second opinion. And they'll send out a second contractor. Not all the people that are involved with the home warranty companies are bad, but there are a few out there. And we do see it. Like Bill said, it's probably about 1 or 2 a month that we're seeing. But when we see those cases, we do go after them.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I know we're talking about a twofold presentation here where the insurance portion is absolutely needed. And so for us, it's just, we just, like you mentioned, it is a potential problem. It could be a potential problem. We follow to our rules and guidelines with these contractors who may or may not misrepresent, and we'll take appropriate action there. So just wanted to, I know there was a topic that had been discussed in many, many years, and wanted to bring it, back to some light as to that it consumes our resources, right? And so I don't think there's any. I know the agenda item says there's a work group here, but there's no work group to be needed there. So thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you so much for the educational piece. And with that said, if there's no other questions from any board members at this time, we'll move on to item I.
I have a question, Dolores.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Jerry Bittner. I'm after listening to all this, I was curious as to whether the problem with this misrepresentation begins with the licensed contractor that's sent out ostensibly to do repairs, or whether this originates with the insurance company. Can you elaborate on that based on what you know?
This is Bill Weatherly, air conditioning chief. I'll give it a try. I mean, it's kind of my opinion on this. I know that these companies, when they sign up with the insurance companies or the home warranty companies, they're very limited in the payments. Okay, so I looked at some of that when I was running my business. More so in the commercial side, it's these chain restaurants. They'll have an insurance company that they use for, like a TGI Fridays would be throughout the nation. Okay, and then they would send out an enrolled air conditioning company. Well, they're limited on the hours. They're limited on what they pay, and frankly, I just had a chance to do it, and I tried it several times with some of the companies, and it just didn't pay back. So these air conditioning companies are looking for a way to make it profitable, and then sometimes extraordinarily profitable. And I mean, that's my opinion. I mean, I don't have anything other to base that on except my anecdotal experience that way.
Mr. Bittner, again, John Medlock, Chief Prosecutor. I agree wholeheartedly with Bill. I think it comes down to the standpoint of the initial payment that the contractor gets of anywhere between $75 and $100 for their service call, and they're expected to fix a whole range of issues. Well, the easiest way to make it profitable for them to make that service call is to find these additional code items that they're claiming, and that's where they'll receive the vast benefit of the compensation for these type of jobs.
So what I'm hearing is Dolores Campion. What I'm hearing is basically insurance companies do their thing, they do their job, they represent themselves in the manner that they should. The kind of gap there is maybe we can call it a gap, is where it's up to the moral compass of the contractor who's doing business with that organization, right? Is what I think I just heard, if I can say that respectfully. When it comes to those type of situations, but we are addressing them with the investigations, and we are investigating them through the prosecution process if need be. So thank you for that.
Jerry, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Bittner, did we answer your question, sir?
Yeah, Jerry Bittner. Yes, you did. As it turns out, it seems to be the air conditioning companies that are the main culprits here, and not necessarily the home warranty insurance companies. And that's what I was searching for.
It appears that way, sir. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak on behalf of Mr. Medlock or Mr. Weatherly, but I think anybody who's ever been in the air conditioning contracting business, and there's quite a few of us on this board, I think we've all kind of been down that path at one time or another. And so I want to be respectful to both parties. And so if there's no further questions, we'll move on to item I. Mr. Jennings.
Thank you, Chairman, and board members. Again, Doug Jennings, Assistant General Counsel for the department. I'm going to share some rule text and give you a brief refresher once I get that up. You'll recall that at your July meeting, the board took its first look at a proposed rule to update the applicable codes for the program. You can see in the text before you, the black underlined text is what was approved for. The black underlined text, or otherwise struck out text, was what was approved by you at your July meeting. The red text I'll address in a moment. Those are my recommendations for moving forward. So just as a refresher for our new member, Rule 75-110 is updated approximately every 3 years to adopt and update the applicable codes used in the air conditioning and refrigeration program. And those codes include the International Residential Code, International Mechanical Code, International Fuel Gas Code, and Uniform Mechanical Code, among some others. Some additional background is that pursuant to Chapter 388 of the Texas Health and Safety Code and administrative rules, the Texas State Energy Conservation Office adopts the International Energy Conservation Code as a statewide energy code. They do that by, that agency, SECO, does that by its own rules, its own administrative rules. And so last time, or in the original rule text, you'll see, if you move down to A5, which is now struck out in red, what our goal was to use A5 as a way of reminding readers of this rule that the IECC has also been adopted by SECO, not for TDLR to explicitly adopt that code, but just to reference it. And it was brought up by some members that could be potentially confusing, not just for our members, but for the public. And after meeting with Bill Weatherly, our ACR chief, and with Shirley Ellis, energy code specialist at SECO, believed that the best thing to do in terms of clarity for our end users was to remove the reference in A5 to the addition of the IECC adopted by SECO. Once again, the addition of the IECC adopted by SECO is set out in SECO's own rules, so there's not really a need for it here. And also, we talked about, Ms. Ellis, Bill Weatherly, and I talked about the potential for conflict between our applicable codes A through 4, A1 through 4, and SECO's implementation of the IECC. And we were convinced that conflict is very, very minimal, because I believe that was another issue also. I don't want to jump around too much. I'm gonna ask you, I'm just gonna give a little more background, and then I'll kick it to our technical experts. If this is a satisfactory change, all we're doing essentially is removing that reference to the IECC to avoid confusion. The motion would be, if the board agrees, would be to recommend adoption of the rule change with the changes noted here in the red text. And that would, at that point, we would take this rule proposal as changed by this red text to our commission for potential adoption. And the goal, of course, is to have these codes in place effective January 1. As you can see below here in B, the 2015 codes would remain in effect through the end of the year. Any work started or permitted before January 1st of next year would be completed in accordance with the 2015 codes. Ms. Shirley Ellis from SECO has kindly volunteered to attend this meeting, which is very helpful. Thank you, Ms. Ellis. And Bill Weatherly, of course, our ACR chief. You've seen him multiple times. He is here. I would, if you have any technical questions, any questions about how, for example, the IECC interacts with our 2018 applicable codes, they are here for your reference. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any legal questions. Thank you.
Any questions from any of the board members? And thank you, Ms. Ellis, for attending and being a resource for us.
This is Dave Yelovich. I just wanted to thank Doug for making the change. That was my original concern was number 5, and I'm fully in support of just striking it as shown.
Any other questions from any other board members? I know this has been a little bit of a topic of discussion, and naturally, as a board, we've had difference of opinions at one time or another, and that's what makes us unique. So for the betterment of the entire industry. So with that said, I think what I'm hearing is that we need to make a motion in a second. Make sure I get the verbiage correct. Keep me in line, Mr. Jenny, to adopt the rule changes with the current. I said that wrong, didn't I? Adopt
Just slightly, Ms. Campion. I believe the motion would be to recommend to the commission, recommend adoption of this proposed rule with the changes made since publication, which are, of course, outlined or underlined or struck out in red.
I wish I could repeat that word for word, but so I think we all have a consensus. Let's make a motion in a second to approve the adoption of 2018 with the current rule changes as proposed.
This is Dave Yelovich. So moved, as Doug has stated.
Do I hear a second?
Gary Bittner, second the motion.
Thank you. Ms. Delia, will you take roll?
Yes, sir. Dave Yelovich,
Aye.
David Morris,
Aye.
Flor Lujan,
Aye.
Suzanne Smith,
Aye.
Jerry Bittner,
Aye.
and Dolores Campion.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campion. I would just like to also, once again, extend our thanks to Ms. Ellis for being present today. Very valuable resource for us and was extremely helpful in helping Bill and I figure out what to do on this rule. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Anytime that I can help, I'll be glad to.
Again, thank you for all the hard work, Mr. Jennings, Ms. Ellis, Mr. Weatherly. I know it sounded fairly easy, but I know it's very complicated on the back end to kind of merge all these items that we were faced with from year to year, month to month, and keep it as simple as we can for our contractors out there in the public. So with that said, thank you. And so, here comes the better part, and I need to figure out how to keep my notes in front of me so I won't look away from the camera. So my humble apologies there. And before we go to item J, or as we're going to item J, any recommendations for the agendas for the next board meeting? absolutely between now and then, I will probably come up with one or two to keep the enrichment piece going for our board members and our new board members as we move forward. And so so we can close item J. Is that correct, Mr. Elbert?
Dave Yelovic. The other part of TDLR is adopting the 2020 National Electric Code. And I've already had some electricians and some HVAC contractors concerned about putting the unit on the outside of the home on a GFCI breaker. I have no personal experience with this, but others have told me that our HVAC systems may be tripping these things, and it could become a problem here starting after November 1st. I don't know if we want to look in that or get some feedback from some professionals that might know that stuff, but I think that could be an issue coming up.
Well, I just happen to hold an electrical license as well, so thank you for bringing that up. I wasn't aware of that. Maybe I need to stay more in tune to that piece of it. But can we put that on the agenda item to discuss that? Is it possible to discuss that piece?
Absolutely, yes, sir. And we'd be happy to pull in our electrical program to that discussion as well.
Thank you so much.
This is Jerry Bittner. I'm wondering if we're going to do anything with moving forward on a discussion of this public comment that was presented today with respect to, I think the idea is to solidify behind one code statewide, eliminating the uniform mechanical code. We're going to do anything with that moving forward, or is that just going to drop off because still some of the municipalities around the state continue to utilize the UMC?
Well, I would correct me if I'm wrong, team members here, if we put it on the agenda item, and at that time, the possibility exists that we put a work group together to discuss that. Is that what would be the normal cadence here?
Mary Winston, TDLR, yes, sir. If we definitely, Mr. Bittner, can move forward with that, and Presiding Officer Compion, that would be how we would move forward with that for more discussion. And a work group will bring back a report. So getting it on the agenda first and going from there.
All right, thank you. So we naturally got 2 agenda items. So thank you for that. And or any other potential discussions? If we're good, we can move on to K, discussion of the next time and location of our next board meeting, which is virtual now. So I can't stop at that Buc-ee's. But anyway, we'll figure something out with that piece. So with that said, should we go ahead and kind of table that for now and get a round table afterward? Would be appropriate at this time.
Mr. Compion, Doug Jennings, I would recommend, we don't have any pressing business, but I certainly would like to get the board back together before too long, especially since it's easier being virtual. My recommendation would just be that at some point in the near future, we ask the staff to poll the members to see what time works best, maybe aiming for spring potentially.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. We'll actually take that into advisement if there's no pressing emergency items that may need to be addressed. And before I go to L, right, everybody's looking for L here. I want to say what a fabulous job the TDLR has done with the virtual training and moving forward. I can't say enough, gratitude that I have for every member, Ms. Delia, who has to deal with all of us, trying to put us all together on one page, even though it's virtual. So, and all the team members here today that makes this possible so we can sit here and discuss what we feel very passionately about our industry. And naturally, I want to say thank you to all the TDR staff members who presented today. There were some tough questions there and respectfully answered all of them appropriately. So we're very grateful for that. I know I am. And so with that said, I'll take it to L. Do I hear a motion to adjourn in a second to adjourn our meeting?
Jerry Bittner, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Yelovic seconds that one.
Ms. Delia? Ms. Delia, would you take roll? I think.
Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize. Dave Yelvick,
Oh, yes.
David Morris,
Aye.
Claude Lujan,
Yes.
Suzanne Smith,
Yes.
Jerry Bittner,
Aye.
and Dolores Compion.
Aye. So you hear my gavel in there.
And the time is 12:00.